Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Christian. And Mark and Jeroen, congratulations on the 30 years anniversary. I have a presentation about coding with AI as a colleague, collaborator. How will we develop software using generative AI? And it's a short look into the future because the future is getting really close already. I prepared a small introduction slide for myself. Sorry about the picture. I never like these things, but sometimes they are mandatory. Like Christian said, I'm a trainer, consultant for AT Computing. I teach programming languages, some operational tools. We do pretty much everything with open source. And I also do all the AI training, so that's why I'm here to tell you something about it. What can we expect for the future? And what about the topic, what is generative AI, what are the possibilities and what are the pitfalls? Because it's not only great and fun, there are some risks as well. So let's start first about the revolution of generative AI. Generative AI is getting increasingly more popular. It's a big hype, but what is it actually? Who of you has ever used generative AI? Can I see show of hands? Not everybody, but I think most of you do, maybe even without knowing it. But what is it? It's not a smart thing. It doesn't understand anything that we say. It just creates new content based on patterns they learned from training data in the past. It's just recreating patterns in a new way so they can create new content. I sometimes hear people telling, yeah, I asked AI to generate something for me, but I got something completely wrong. It didn't understand my question. Well, I'm sorry to burst your bubble. It doesn't understand anything you say. It just finds a pattern in the question or in the prompt. And it looks in the training data to find a matching pattern, and they will generate some content based on that pattern. So it doesn't understand anything like logic, emotions, or anything like that. It just tries to copy from what it's seen in the training data without knowing anything about it. So that's what it doesn't do. But why is the hype here right now? And I think we're lucky enough that we are getting kind of past the hype. Because a while ago everybody was shouting, we need AI, we need generative AI. If it doesn't have AI, it's not interesting anymore. And I think it's a waste. It's a rather dangerous mindset, because AI is here to support us. It shouldn't lead us anywhere. It should help us get there. It should guide us. Why is it important? Why do I think we're past the point? Recently at an AI conference, there was a big company who said, we want to use AI, but not for the sake of using AI. We need to see what it can bring to us and how it can help us. We have to start small and then just build upon that fact. And I think that is the wisest and the safest way to go. Don't just trust AI and go with the flow. But it still didn't answer why is it successful right now. Well, first of all, AI has been here for quite a long time. And when I graduated technical AI, my master, it was more or less the same already. But I remember when we had to train facial recognition software, we took pictures from people in the class, 3 pictures of each, 1 or 2 with glasses and 1 without, and that was our training data. Nowadays, we have a good internet connection. The internet is full of data, literally full of data, so much more. And we have a lot of processing power, so we can pretty much process all the data that's there. And the larger models, they completed the internet like several times already. So this wasn't able, we weren't able to do this in the past. So this is why AI is now so much more powerful compared to several years ago, while the concept itself hasn't changed. Of course, we have some smarter architectures that optimize it and that make it a little bit more efficient. But the idea, the concept is still the same. Okay, here we see part of the transformer model. It was introduced by Google. They wrote a paper in 2017, Attention is all you need. There they created a model with an encoder and a decoder, and they intended to use this for creating translations. And this was very nice. And OpenAI took this model and they said, okay, we don't need the encoder. We just need the decoder part, and we even take out a small part of the decoder, and that's what we're going to use to create a next word prediction. And this is mainly the foundation for OpenAI and every other model that's based upon this concept. They also added the reinforced learning, so we as humans have been helping them train models by giving it feedback whether something is correct or not. So we learn from the data and we judge whether they learned it correctly, yes or no. This is essentially how the large language models work. They just predict the next word. Nowadays we talk about the next token because we can also use it for images and every other data type there is currently. So now we're going to head into the direction of software development, but first, before we're going to start telling you what can it do for us as a developer, it is helpful for the entire software development chain. It's not just the developer that benefits with the AI, but even the system, the planner, the requirements, the designer, and the tester. So if you go to a customer and you want to create a new software, so you create new software for them, you have a conversation about what are the requirements, what is the need, what is the goal, what's the purpose, what are the boundaries and stuff like that. Well, first, if you had a great requirements analyst, you had a great conversation, you wrote down the points, the requirements became clear. Sometimes you had to go back to the customer to clarify some stuff. But nowadays they can get help from the AI as well. In preparation of the conversation, you can say, I'm going to meet a client, we're going to discuss the requirements of an application somewhat like this. Can you set me up with some of the questions that I should take into account? And then they can prepare it for you. You go to the conversation, you can take your notes, and after the conversation is done, you can hand it over to the AI. Did I miss some of the requirements? Is this complete, or do I need to have some more questions? And it might be that they realize, oh, I see some requirements, but if these requirements are necessary, then you will probably need these requirements as well, so they can help you. Well, the same goes for the design. With the requirements there, we're going to create a design for our program. AI can help you generate flow diagrams, class diagrams, and all types of diagrams. But they can also help you create user interfaces so you can show them to the customer. So it will help us speed up the entire process quite a bit. Then, of course, when the development is done, everything needs to be tested. And well, as a developer myself, I never liked the testing part very much because it was proving me how incapable I was of my work sometimes. But yes, sure, it isn't just necessary to do so. But it's not always easy to write or to create test data, and this is where AI can provide a helping hand, or cleanse some existing data to make it suitable to be used as training data. Well, a lot of possibilities, and AI is certainly not limited to just writing code. So now about the power of AI for the development themselves. First of all, the first point I think is the most well-known benefit of AI. It can write code for you. And that's nice. The models nowadays are getting better and better, so they can write complex algorithms for you. But especially in the past, they weren't that great, and you could ask them to create boilerplates. That's one of the things I used it most for. If I knew I had to write several classes, I'd just say, create me these classes. They need to fulfill this interface, and I will write the implementation myself, because in that case, I am sure that it will work the way I intend to. But nowadays, they are getting far and far better. This is one of the most commonly used applications for generative AI. But the other point, the next point, is very useful as well. I've worked in projects where we were going to replace legacy software. And the problem with legacy software is that you don't always have the knowledge inside the company about the legacy systems, or there were only one or two persons around the company that could actually help you. And then they needed to be available, so it was always very difficult. And one of the trends was simply, don't touch it. Don't break it, we're going to build a shell around it. and we're going to make use of it, but we don't want to touch the legacy code. Now these days with AI, you can ask them questions. We have some legacy code, we need to change it. How does it work? Where can I find this specific part? Can you help me? And they will get you pointers. They will explain what is happening. They can create documentation if it might have been lost. So it's very powerful. It's just like you have an experienced programmer sitting next to you, waiting for you to ask questions. You can even ask it to translate from another language to maybe in the current language that you're using in the company. So this is very useful. Then the third point I'm going to skip for now because I have a nice story and I think it's pretty much the most important use of AI. The last one, the documentation. I think the developers that worked in Agile or in Scrum, they have experience. We work in sprints, 2 to 3 weeks, or sometimes longer. And the product owner comes to you and they ask you, are you done with your feature? And then you say, yeah, almost done. I'm only wrapping up the documentation. And then they say, okay, you're finished. Because we have a customer, we have a stakeholder who really want to have a new feature. Can we solve this first? And then in the next sprint, you will create the documentation. And then I hope you struggle a bit and say, yeah, we should definitely do it first. But in the end, like mostly, you simply have to, you will probably apply to what the product owner asks you and you will just pick up the feature first. And then the next sprint, there's something else that's important. So the documentation gets shifted to later sprints, later on, until half a year later you finally get the time to finish it. And you think, what did I do at that moment? Or when something breaks down and they come to you, yeah, something broke and we want the documentation but we can't find it. Yeah, that's something that could happen. Well, nowadays with AI, it's very easy to say, this is the code that we've written, can you please generate documentation for me? And now you have a nice document explaining what the code does. You don't have to write everything down yourself, but you just have to check it. And you can assume that this is a lot faster than writing every line of comment or documentation yourself. And often, it's not always the case, but in many cases, it's less impactful if something in the documentation is slightly off compared to when something is wrong in the source code. So it isn't a perfect fit, but it will definitely help you. It goes for README documentations, but also for comments inside the code, or if you have a version control tool and you have to write change logs, you can ask tools to create commit messages for you, explaining what has changed in the recent version. Okay, and then the third point. I skipped it. I think it's the most missed opportunity there is at the moment. And I will explain it by telling an anecdote I've heard somebody telling who checked the final year assignment at the University of Leuven. And he said, with the introduction of AI, there were two things that were perfectly clear. The first year assignments, the pieces of code became a lot larger, more sophisticated, they added more functionality, even things that normally they would learn in the second or third year. So the projects were a lot bigger. But the biggest difference was the skill level of the students. He said it went in two directions. On the one side, we had students that just took the assignment, went to the AI and said, this is the assignment, please write me the code. They got the code back, they tried to test it, it failed, they saw the error messages and they told it to the AI, these are the error messages, how can I fix it? And AI generated a newer version and this would continue for a while until it was finished. They had a working product and then they were asked to the committee to tell them what their application does, how it works, why did it make certain decisions about the architecture. And then they were like, I don't know, AI told me so. And they couldn't answer any of the questions. So they had a working product, or at least for this situation. It wasn't always the case that it worked flawless, because they missed mistakes. They missed some errors. But their level was actually quite poor. Then the other hand, there were students, they took the same assignment, went to the AI and they said, create me the application. And then they looked at the code and they saw something that they haven't had discussed in this year. And they asked me, what's this? I don't know this topic. I don't know this construction. Can you please explain it to me? And then they used the AI as a senior developer that was just drinking coffee, watching out of the window, waiting for you to help. And what they noticed is that those students, they got a skill level of actually to a second or a third grade student. They were far, far superior to the students of the previous years. And that is, those students, they embraced the possibilities. They didn't see it as a competitor or something just to do your dirty work, but they used it as a tool to enhance their own knowledge. So I think this is the biggest and the most unused application of AI. Of course, here it says, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. AI comes with risk as well. So the first bullet point, data privacy. For the developers over here, before AI, if you had a problem or you were stuck and you couldn't find a solution, what did you do? You took a piece of your code and you posted it on Stack Overflow or some other forum. But what did you do before posting it? You were checking, are there any secrets in there, passwords, API keys or whatever, and you would blur them, take them out or change them for something else. Nowadays with AI, people sometimes just blindly copy-paste their entire source code. And it's a very familiar problem that if you want to have an API key, but you don't have it, just ask one of the AIs first. And it's very likely that they will provide you with an API key from somebody else. AI is very helpful. And I was hoping that they fixed this issue already, but recently I had a student who said, no, it still works. Just tested it the other week. So be very careful what information you provide the AI. And there are some solutions for this, and we'll discuss it later on. The other one, equality and hallucinations. People sometimes blindly trust the AIs. So if you ask AI to generate code, they sometimes come up with libraries that you should use. And they always tell it with full confidence that the library is there. But that is not always the case. And that's what we call hallucinating. And when the library is not there, it's fine. You will just get an error, you cannot find the library. But the problem is the AIs tend to predict the same library in multiple occasions. And hackers discovered this pattern, and they took some of the libraries and they said, okay, sure, let's be helpful. We are going to create the library for you with all the desired functionality. But of course, we want something in return, so either we will infect you with malware, open a backdoor, or give you another virus as well, just to make the experience complete. So be aware that if an AI suggests you to use a library, do some research, see when the library is created. Hopefully it's open source and you can see the contents, but be aware that this is an issue. The other one, licenses and ownerships. And this is going in two ways. Because how did the AI learn how to write code? By getting all the available source code from the internet, process it, learn the patterns, and then recreate some of the patterns. But the problem is, AI looked at the code. Some providers had licensed code on their website, and the license says, here you're free to look at it, to see how it works, but you're not allowed to use it. And the AI sees the code, but they don't read the things below, so they just include this in their patterns, in their training data, and they may reproduce same sort-like code. So without knowing it, you might get code from an AI that's licensed, that you are not allowed to use. And just like everything, the law always follows the technology, so it's very difficult to trace. And I know they're working for tooling right now to prevent this in the future, but it might be that you're using code that you're not allowed to use. This is one of the issues. On the other hand, if I use AI to create code, you cannot license it yourself. Because they say everybody could have generated this code with the AI. Well, there is a gray area, you can, but then you have to prove that you provided just enough context and enough details to assure that the AI only generated this code because you asked it. And of course, it's very debatable about what is enough context and what is not. So it's also one of the issues. Then the other one, how to deal with AI-generated code. Because let's be honest, if you have to review code from a colleague and he writes a commit with just 10 lines changed, you will look every line into detail. If they ask you to review a change containing 200 lines, yeah, you will spend some more time on it, but I don't think you will spend 20 times as much time on the first review. So you should actually, but in general, this isn't the case, and you will just take points and see, is this correct, or you'll just be speed reading, so it will be less clear. With AI, I told you before, they generate a lot of code, so the commits will be a lot bigger. The reviewing process will be done by 2 persons now, because you have to do it yourself, because you are responsible, and just like every other code that's delivered, should be reviewed by another one as well. Still, this might be difficult to track. It might be insecure. So one of the things that I would like to suggest, and I think is a good practice, if you have code generated by an AI, make sure that in some way it's marked by either comments or in your Git history, and even you could use separate branches, so you have a pipeline running that as soon as AI generated code, it will perform some extra test, just to make sure the quality matches the quality that you're used to have in your projects, because you don't want some AI messing up the quality of your code. Might happen, but you try to prevent it as much as possible, so be aware of this. Then the other thing, security. There are a lot of security issues with AI that people don't know. For web development, many of you might know the existence of the OWASP Top 10. Those are the 10 most common vulnerabilities found on the websites, from SQL injection to cross-site scripting and stuff like that. The same OWASP Top 10, or well, not the same, but there is also an OWASP Top 10 for large language models. And then you take a look at all the risk, all the factors that could affect an AI. So be aware of that and focus on that. And then the last one, I really like the English term, the lemming behavior. It's not a risk of the AI itself, it's a risk of the people using the AI. And I've seen it quite a few times, and I heard it mentioning today as well. People that don't know how to program will use AI to write programs. But the difficulty is, can you check if a program works correctly if you don't know how to program yourself? What do? They just try to run it, they try to test it, but those tests are very often incomplete. And they say, yeah, sure, this works, but without knowing it exactly. So they do have some kind of lemming behavior. We just follow the AI, they must be right because they've done it 1,000 times. I don't think we should do it. We should always be thinking for ourselves. Keep the responsibility for yourself. You are the one responsible for writing the code. Okay, so this was the slide about all the dooms. It's not all bad. We definitely have to use this. Okay, what's the role for us as a software developer? Who here thinks that software developers will be obsolete in a few years? This is a nice response, because the media, nobody raises their hand. If you asked the media a few months ago, they were telling you, if you're a programmer, just stop, because you will be obsolete in a few months, a few years. I don't think so. I definitely do not think so. But the role is definitely changing. We're going to be spending a lot less time writing the code, but we're going to spend a lot more time reviewing, correcting, validating the code that's generated by AI. Prompt engineering will be a key skill. If we don't know how to use the AI, well, we are getting irrelevant. We still have the knowledge, so don't be afraid of that. But the speed or how fast we can deliver software, we will just lose it to the people who can use LLMs in an efficient way. Then on the other hand, we have to spend a lot more time focusing on security. I'm not completely sure if we have to spend more time, because I think security has always been an issue, or at least since we are all connected to the web. but we need to be aware of it. Like with the privacy sensitive data and the API keys and stuff, one of the solutions is just running a local model. And it could be a model that runs on your laptop or on your desktop. Those are smaller, less capable models. But as a company, you could also say, I'm going to have a dedicated server that runs a model, and I will make it available for everybody inside the company. But all the questions, all the prompts, they will always remain on that server. So it will never leave to the outside world. Nowadays, we also have we had them before, the paid subscriptions. But I must say, as a person, I'm not completely trusting it. But normally, if you pay for a subscription, they will not use your queries as training data. But if you don't have a paid subscription, every question that you ask will be used in the training data for the newer versions of the model. Then again, if you use AI in your application itself, that's happening more and more as well, you need to implement AI guardrails. One of the things is validating data that is leaving my application to the outside world, because it might leak personal data or stuff like that due to prompt engineering or whatever. We need to make sure that the data that is leaving the application is valid and is secure. So, yeah, the last thing, AI is definitely not a threat, and I think you all realized it, so that's great. But it's just a multiplier of our skill. If you use this the right way, you're not going to be obsolete. You're not going to be replaced by AI, but you will be a far better developer. You will be able to create stuff that you couldn't create before. So my call to you, please go and experiment, but always remain critical. Embrace the technology, don't fear it, because it's here to help us. It's not going to replace us. And yeah, very important, stay in control of your own code. If you break something for your boss and they have a high bill, or they will have a claim, or the company goes bankrupt, it's not that they're going to complain to the AI. They are definitely going to complain to you. So stay aware. And that's it. I want to thank you for your attention. And